What is going on, people? We are Tottenham TV here, back again after watching another Premier League defeat. Tottenham 0, Crystal Palace 2 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Our first game since going through to the final in Bilbao on Thursday. It was a warm welcome from the team, from the fans. The atmosphere was, I saw, buzzing during before the game. Everyone excited. The fact we got we got a European final to look forward to next week. But the game wasn't great, let's be honest. It's been very similar to our other Premier League games in recent weeks, or for a lot of this season. Our 20th Premier League defeat. I'm here with Ashmatic from Spurs Kings TV for the instant match reaction. What can we say? Eze gets the double, very comfortable. Palace controlled it. I mean, when you look at like this game, how do you assess what you saw? Is it a case of, you know, Tottenham making 8 changes and that's what led to a disjointed performance and the fact we're focusing on Europe? Or is it, you know, you could argue Palace have got their own things to focus on. So is that an excuse to have this kind of performance?
This is it, Sim. I think it's a mixture of all the above, because the goals we conceded was like copy and paste. Always down a particular side, lapses of concentration. And I said it before, the actual goal, if you actually watch it back, it's one of our defenders, fullbacks in particular, jumping. Instead of the midfielder jumping, it's the fullback that jumps. And that creates all of the space in behind for them to go and attack. And so this is clearly something that was spoken about before a game as a strategic move, in my opinion. Because it wasn't only once we conceded it, same goal, we conceded it twice. And we've seen this throughout the Premier League season. And if take those goals away, the chances they had all came down from that same side as well. So then people will say, oh, is it the player? You know, it's the player's fault for, you know, lapses of concentration. But the fact that he's asked to press so high up, for me, is more of a tactical instruction as opposed to the player doing what he wants and getting it wrong. So that's my overall analysis of it. But again, you have to say that we did make 8 changes before the game.
And also with Decky going off injured early, which could be a nightmare. Yeah. We had 4 teenagers on the pitch. 4 teenagers, you know, against Palace side, who made a couple of changes. By and large, it's most their first choice 11, isn't it? Yeah,
no, you're right. At the same time, a lot of fans did want to see some of these players in their so-called right positions, and those teenagers, we got to see them in those positions, and unfortunately for us, we got to learn a lot about some individuals in certain positions. And is it good enough? Is it Premier League level where we want to be in the top 6? That's what's up for debate, in my opinion. It's early, it's late in the season, but earlier in some of these lots' career, and the argument is, but they're young, potential. And if we're going to keep with that kind of mindset, are we then saying that, you know, the league isn't as important? Are we expecting next season for us to...
Well, right now it's not as important.
No, right now, but I'm saying in terms of potential, does that carry on into next season? Do we keep saying more potential? Because some of the players that we've been linked with are more youngsters. For example, Dibbling. And I know we're probably going down that eccentric youth route where, you know, it's Tottenham Project FC kind of, that's what we're trying to do. But at the same time, that may cost you during the league unless some of these players can develop quite quickly. And that's what you have to weigh yourself up with now, I think, if we're going to continue with it. And as I said before, you're looking at players like Son, because Son did come on, he's experienced. And I said, even before his injury, he didn't have the greatest of form going into things. He's been battling, in my opinion, to get back to his old self. Some people will say, you know, he's been played out of position. That's why his performances haven't been so great. Either way, he's meant to be our leader. He's meant to be our captain. He's meant to be the talisman. And if you look at the numbers, 11 goals, 11 assists, 22 goal contributions in total, you'd say that's not bad. It's not one of his best seasons, but at the same time, you look at this game in isolation, and when he did come on, I felt like if you're going to be the front man, you've got to lead the line well. You've got to make important runs. So players can get their heads up and find you in that space. And then in terms of your link-up play, you need to find players and bring them in. And then when you do get your chances in, you need to get a shot off. And the one chance he did kind of have, it was too predictable in my opinion. There was no disguise on the shot. There was no, trying to get away from the player, separate himself from his player and get a shot off. So for me, it was like, I don't know, being quite harsh here on them. But I think it's just the reality at the moment that we have to have that kind of conversation.
Son definitely struggled. I'm just watching a guard of honour Arsenal giving Liverpool. That's just being a bit of a smile on my face at the moment. Something we can enjoy while watching these terrible performances
100%.
in the Premier League right now. Clearly, it's so obvious right now. The focus is just totally on that final. I think you can see the players, they're really struggling to get up for these games. Not only are we struggling to get up for it, but also making lots of changes. We're very disjointed. The team has got clearly very little familiarity. It was a hard watch. And 2-0 flattered us, let's be honest. It did, didn't it? It could have been a lot worse than 2-0. They were cutting for us so easily. Eze was getting all sorts of joy in the middle of the park. We, for a lot of the game, were just lumping the ball forward and hoping rather than playing any sort of football. Muniz was having so much joy down that right-hand side. He was constantly in acres of space, like he never wasn't in acres of space essentially down the right-hand side. And it was every time they got the ball, they were looking for him because he just knew he was going to be free. And more often than not, they were able to get him in really good positions and get him on that right. And he created so many chances and should have scored himself. Eze got that brace. Really, it was obviously from his point of view a good brace, but two very easy goals. One of them from Munoz. I think, did Munoz assist both? No, Saad assisted the second, but Munoz passed it for an open goal for the first one, and they found Saar in behind, and he squared it for Eze for a comfortable finish for the second. And they had 2 goals ruled out for VAR from VAR in the first half as well. Spurs, from our point, it rarely threatened this Palace team. The closest we got was maybe Porro had a free kick which went just over the bar. Mikey Moore nearly got on the end of an Odegaard cross. One positive, it's a very small positive, but one thing that was a bit of a positive was I did feel when Odegaard went into the 10, he looked quite bright in that position.
Yeah, he's played there before, hasn't he?
Yeah, I thought he was a small positive, I would say.
And he was popping up into spaces where he was showing himself, getting on the ball, trying to make things happen. And But the only criticism I have, and I said to you in the stream, is it an instruction for them not to shoot? Because there's times where they're in a central area and it kind of opens up for them. And then the next action is they're kind of passing it towards the flanks instead of being on the edge of the D, saying, let me have a crack here. It might deflect. And then also in the central area, it's not just on the 10 to kind of shoot. It's also for them to create, but for them to create, the forward player, whether that be the striker or the left forward or the right forward, because I think Ange plays a front three of strikers. He doesn't rely on one striker to get the goals. Almost like the one forward, he's the one that kind of drops into midfield at times and he rotates into the 10 and he kind of, links the play at times. So sometimes the forward won't get all the goals, but the other 2 forwards, they're meant to be like strikers rather than like just creative outlets. But either way, I didn't see any runs into the box from those forward players once the 10 Odegaard was on the ball to kind of him to thread through, if that makes sense. And then, okay, if you're saying that the front 3 are meant to be wingers or touchline wingers, then the creativity, they need to get a lot more balls into the box, whether it be crosses and early, which one ball, like you said before, did go into Saar and he got the header. And I said, if that was a Richarlison, maybe that goes in. I thought that substitution, in my opinion, instead of it, Son, I'm not mad at Son coming on, but I would have liked Richarlison on to become like, the focal point, something to aim for. I wouldn't want to risk Solanke, but you've got 2 centre forwards there. Why not use one of them and then use Son to kind of run off one of them? Do you know what I mean? Run in behind But I know we don't play like that. We like to have our forwards a little bit wider, with a bit more width to stretch the pitch, etc. But yeah, it's just like I was saying before, the fullbacks for me, I thought maybe we could reserve some of them and maybe not make them jump so early and be so, I know it's the same conversations, but
No, it wasn't wrong with ours of that. I just see who he's lining up. I think you could see though, even today, like Bentacle came off at half time, Porro came off on the hour. Like we're just managing this squad in all gearing up to one specific game. So as much as I'm angry, I'm frustrated, and it's horrible. It's painful to watch these games, and it's horrible to watch them and to suffer so many defeats. And it's painful to go sit through all these Premier League games. We've got one mission to do, and that's winning Bilbao. And I think that is what we're all gearing towards. And at the moment, it's like these Premier League games seem to be sacrificial lambs at the altar of the Europa League, it seems. And if we don't win that Europa League, this season goes down as our worst probably in history. But if we get over the line, none of this is all going to matter in the grand scheme of things, because if the objective at the beginning of the season was to get in the Champions League and win a trophy, winning that Europa League kills two birds with one stone, and that's the reality. So I can understand the temptation and the willingness to kind of bin off these Premier League games in search of glory. Doesn't really make it any less painful though when we're watching it, and we're being subjected to these really abject performances where the players don't seem to really give a toss. We're just basically losing games left, right, and centre, and it's kind of we're putting up with it at the moment, and I don't really know what else we can do. Like, we can't really play a much stronger team unless, because if he does, even if we win the game, if we pick up an injury, everyone's going to give him pelters. We did pick up an injury with Decky, and hopefully he's okay. We don't know anything. His reaction to it makes me seem that hopefully it's a precautionary thing, but we don't know yet.
So are you saying with the starting 11, because I think that's the narrative now, with the starting 11, do Spurs have a different result against Palace at home?
Probably, or a different performance, I would say. I would say it's much more of an even game. We got absolutely bad. Like, let's be honest, this looked like a top team versus a relegation fighting team. That's what it was. That's what it looked like to me. Palace were dominant in all facets. They were dominating possession. Not only were they dominating possession, they were finding it easy to cut us open. They were holding us at arm's length. For Guehi, Richards were so dominant. That back three was so dominant in the back. Tell, Odebear, and Moore barely had a sniff. Moore struggling to get involved in the game. The only one who I thought who was looking all right at times was Odebear when he moved into the 10. So that was the only time.
So does that mean
Gray struggled badly in midfield?
Does that
really
mean
badly?
Those players aren't good enough then? Is that what we're saying?
I wouldn't say.
We can't have it both ways. We can't say that, if we had the stronger team out, they would have done better. But then I think
collectively it's not good enough when you got 4 teenagers and you got a much changed team, and you got Davis and Dancer at the back, and you've got Gray as a teenager in the middle of the park, coupled with Moore as a teenager, Tell as a teenager, Odebear as a teenager,
that was our
all of it together. But I'm saying if you put it all together with no experience, and also the fact that they've barely played together, all these players, it's very, very disjointed. It leads to the absolute shit show that we saw. Today in terms of how much of a mismatch in quality it was between us and Palace. If they change a lot of players, then it would be less understandable. But the fact that they had a very settled 11 on their team, so their 11 knows what it's doing by and large. It's going to be very close to the 11 they play in the final next week that they played today. It'll be very close. So that was their first choice team, and I think it would have been different if we would have played our first choice 11. But we were never going to do that under the circumstances, and I think it's understandable in my opinion. But doesn't mean that I watch these games and I'm happy with what I'm seeing, or that I enjoy it, or that it's acceptable or anything like that. But at the end of the day, what else are we supposed to do right now in terms of selection wise?
Yeah, no, my question was, are those, you've answered it anyway. I was just asking if those players were good enough, because I said,
right now, to be winning games consistently, no, they're not.
That's all.
Yeah. Look, if you play some of these players in a more settled team, they'll look different. But you put them all together in a mishmash like today, you're going to get the performances like today. And it was an absolute mishmash. And it was hard to watch. We were awful. But I'm kind of numb to these defeats at the moment. We've had so many, and it's like after every game, after every defeat, you'll get the clamour of about Ange Postecoglou, and he's got to go. I'm seeing people in the chat. Some people in the chat, he's got to go before the final. Sack him before the final. I'm like, get a grip, guys. Get a grip. We've got a massive final coming up. He's led us there. We deserve to be there. We've been brilliant in Europe, and if we win that Europa League, it's the biggest trophy we've won in my lifetime. First European trophy in 4 years. So that is rightly where the focus has got to be. That is what it's got to be. And look, the positive is we've got 2 more of these Premier League games to contend with, 2 more to sit through, and then this disaster of a Premier League season is going to be over. But if we win that Europa League, if we bring home a European trophy, if we get into Champions League for next season, then all of it won't be in vain. And that's all I've got to say on that.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough.
But in terms of where you sit on that, people are saying sack Ange before the final.
No, that's way too extreme. I think there's 2 extremes. I feel like there's an Ange FC, and then there's Tottenham supporters, and then there's people with agendas that, see, I told you so. And I think people get whirlwind into either side, if that makes sense, where some people kind of sit in the middle of it all. And unfortunately, like kids, with 2 parents arguing, sometimes that kid turns out to be a brat, when mum's not happy with dad. But anyway, I just think we're in a weird situation, and you're right, it's all or nothing on that cup. I said before the game, I was still on a high, and I said the result didn't really matter at the time to me, but when you say it and then you live through it, it's completely different. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm experiencing right now. I went to the players now, and I'm looking at players, and I'm like, are they quite good enough? Like Kingsley today,
he was fine, wasn't he?
No, I'm just saying Kingsley today, obviously he's coming off the back of not playing many games, and he looked a bit rusty. There was one shot where he spilt it, and I was like, oof, on another day you get punished. Do you know what I'm saying? There was times when he went long, and I'm like, maybe not go long. Look at the players that,
We were constantly going long today, and it was like it wasn't
lazy. It wasn't just Kingsley. It wasn't.
I'm saying all the players.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't just him. It was other players as well. So I'm agreeing with you. But I'm just saying that sometimes you got to look at the players that you need to know your teammates. All right, it's a 50-50 draw here. I'm gonna kick it long into Tell or Odobert. Look how small Odobert is. Like you expecting him to win that. So it's those kind of like things,
and especially up against Lacroix. Some of those physical centre backs in the league.
So then now I'm looking at him like a little bit sideways in terms of IQ. Do you understand? And intelligence. Like you need to know when to go short, when to go long. Like, and that's what I've got to say on that. But you've got centre backs, you've got full backs. No one really stood out for me. Porro went off obviously in the second half. In the midfield, there was no balance. We were second to every ball. And then up front, we had no firepower. It was as simple as that.
Yeah.
And that was my assessment of it. And that's
Pretty
what
much.
I mean, without talking about the manager, without getting into tactics, just talking about individuals, that's where my head is. Because I'm looking at next season. I'm also like not just looking at today's game. I'm looking at where we heading as a club. Because the top 4, the top 6, always, like, we're Spurs fans. My ambition is that I still see my club as a top 6. And let's face it, you've got Aston Villa and Newcastle. I respect them a lot. And they're trying to muscle their way in. And Newcastle didn't get Champions League last season, but the season before last they did. Do you know what I mean? And now they're back, pretty much. So it's these type of questions I'm having in my head, and I'm like, we need to be serious come what may. And I'm having these kind of conversations, these difficult conversations going into the end of the season, into the summer window, to know that we're going to recruit right. And it's not all Project Youth. And that's why I was like, question marks on Tell, for example. But yeah, that's just me. That's what I'm going to say.
No, and that's fair enough. And I think we need more experience in that squad. We need a deeper squad. We need to stop relying as heavily as we are on teenagers. When we need, especially in games where you want to be able to trust players to step in and put in and the floor not to be so low when they step in. And at the moment it's being ruthlessly taken advantage of by opposition teams at the moment, especially when we do that and they smell blood a lot of the time. But
It's easy
I
3
agree.
points. It's easy
It's
3
easy 3 points.
Yeah, they look at Tottenham. They say, "Oh, we'll go and play Tottenham at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium."
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And we've got no fear factor.
No, nothing.
Nothing. Teams don't respect us, and we need to get back to that team where, we were ballsy, we're not easy to beat. Oh no, that Tottenham team, they're a headache. They're always pressing, they're aggressive, they're always winning the ball, etc. And I feel like we've lost our way a little bit.
And it's
now
apparently it's now officially our worst ever Premier League season when it comes to defeats. The amount 20 defeats. I think in terms of points wise, we're on 38. It's a good chance we end the season with 1 point per game in terms of the Premier League season. So it's not good reading whatsoever. And look, whatever I want to say about if we win Europa League and all this kind of stuff, he has to take also responsibility for the league campaign, 100%. And the fact that it's been so disastrous, obviously I don't think it's all on him, but I think a lot of it is, and I think he has to. It's under his stewardship. That's the reality at the end of the day. So it's another poor defeat. It's another defeat. We've been outdone, and it's another game where we just have to get through and try and put it to the back of our minds, because we got all geared towards that game against United in Bilbao.
Here's one for you. XG, mate. Spurs 0.8, Palace 3.83. There you go. Yeah. I know you love it XG, and that's why I put
loving the XG. Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me, and that's also not discounting two goals ruled out for VAR, which were close goals. Which were close. One of them just about hit Guehi's arm.
Yeah.
Mateta was just about offside.
Yeah.
So those were close. So it could have been a lot worse. 2-0. I think we got away with the 2-0 today.
Yeah, we did.
We got away with the 2-0. To be honest, it could have been a lot worse. But look, Bilbao, that's what it's all about. And that's got to be the constant message, is whatever happens, we got to make sure we're going into Bilbao in the most positive mood. And look, it doesn't help the mood when you're losing games in this manner and playing like this in the Premier League. It's not going to help fans feel good about the European final. But you just got to remember that in Europe, when we have played our first choice 11, we looked a lot different team. We looked a lot better. And we can still have glory this season, and it can still be a special end to the season. And lifting a trophy is nothing to be sniffed at. It's nothing to be ignored. It's nothing to be brushed over. That would be massive for this football club and for us as fans. So that's what we have to focus on, I think, moving forward. We've got one more Premier League game in between there. So let's just get through that Villa game without too much of a heavy defeat, and then it's all on Bilbao, and that's it.